This is the xa'isla Handbook, Part 11, and in this video we're going to take a look at the last group of consonants, which are called laryngeal sounds. Laryngeal sounds come from the deepest part of the vocal tract. So these sounds come directly from the larynx, or the voice box. So this is the larynx here. That's your voice box. That's where these sounds come from. I should probably move that H down here as well. The previous group of sounds were uvular sounds. So this is the uvula. So we saw those sounds coming from around this area. And much like uvular sounds, laryngeal sounds cause retraction in I and U. So with the previous group of sounds, the uvular sounds, we saw changes in the letters I and U. They changed from E to A for the letter I, and the letter U changed from U to O. We didn't see any examples of the U in the previous group of sounds, but we don't have any in this group either, but we can only go through so many words in this video. So the first letter is actually a symbol. This is an apostrophe. You can see that there's two apostrophes here. This first one is starting the word, because as I mentioned before, if you remember in previous videos, I mentioned that xa'isla words do not start with vowels. So there's an A here. We can't start it with just an A. We have to put in something in front of it. So that's why we put the apostrophe there. And then there's another apostrophe, and this causes what's called a glottal stop. So this is your voice box. This opening in the middle, that is your glottis. That's the opening between your vocal cords. So when you make a glottal stop, you're closing your glottis. You're closing off the airflow. So this word comes out as a'ant. A'ant. So you hear ah, and then there's a brief pause caused by this apostrophe, and then unt. A'ant. And that is the word for herring eggs. And then we have the letter H. So you see there's a letter I here right after the H. So it's not going to say E, it's going to say A. So this is hatemas. Hatemas. And I'm realizing that there's a typo here. There should actually be an apostrophe on top of this M. So this should be a glottalized M. And it works very much like this apostrophe by itself, where there's a slight pause right here. So it's hatemas. A lot of people mispronounce this or write it as hatemas, but that's not the correct pronunciation. There's no T. That T sound is not there. It's actually a stop. So you're saying hate, and you're closing your glottis very quickly, and then opening again, and then saying mas. Hatemas. Hatemas. So again, it's not hate-mus. There's no T sound there. It's a pause. It's hate-mus. It's silent. And hate-mus is chief. And then there's some explanation here. Uvulars and laryngeals are often called back sounds because they come from the back of the vocal tract. So the uvularized sounds come from back here, where the uvula is, and then the laryngeal sounds come from kind of down there. So these sounds, plus the ejective P, the regular T, and the ejective T, or as I like to call them, apostrophe T, or apostrophe and apostrophe T, and the apostrophe by itself cause retraction in the letters I and U. So this is one benefit of grouping letters according to their sounds. So instead of listing them A, B, C, D, E, F, G, like they do in the English alphabet. Instead of doing that, where the letters, the sounds have absolutely no relation to each other at all, if we list them like this, where they have the apostrophe and then the H, and then in the previous group we had the G bar, the regular Q, ejective Q, and the X bar. If you remember all the back sounds when you read xa'isla, then you'll know immediately that it will cause retraction if it's followed by an I or a U. So if you remember these two letters or symbols are grouped together, they both cause retraction. And if we go back a page, all of these cause retraction as well. So when you have them grouped together, you know automatically if any of these letters, any of these sounds are followed by an I or a U, there's going to be retraction. So that's one of the benefits of grouping sounds according to their place of articulation, grouping them by how they're actually made, like the places that they come from. That is more beneficial than trying to list them in alphabetical order. Because if you list them in alphabetical order, you'll have H in the middle of the alphabet, and then you'll have this apostrophe way at the back, because it comes last. The apostrophe is considered a consonant, but it comes last. It comes after all of the other consonants. Whereas if you group them together, then you can see that the apostrophe is related to the H. You can see that these four symbols, these four letters are related to each other because of the way that they're made. And you add these three letters. And something else I want to mention here is that nobody taught me this. I found all of this out by doing research. Handbook actually listed most of these letters that cause retraction. I found a couple more. And what I did was I tested them. I can't remember which ones in particular, but I think it might have been these ones here. I wasn't quite sure, so what I did was I tested them. I found words that had an apostrophe P followed by an I, apostrophe P followed by U, and then I checked the pronunciation. And I found out that on these letters also cause retraction in the letters I and U. But as I mentioned before, the apostrophe only causes retraction in the letter I. It doesn't affect the letter U. So you'll have to get used to the rules. Once you know these rules, you'll be able to sound any word out that you see, because you'll be able to predict how the letter I is going to sound or the letter U is going to sound by looking at what's in front of it. If it's one of these letters, one of these three letters, or a laryngeal sound or a uvular sound, then you will know like that. You'll know automatically that it'll be A instead of E, or O instead of U. So again, if you remember all of the back sounds when you read xa'isla, then you'll know immediately that it will cause retraction if it's followed by an I or a U. That will become automatic. Once you get really familiar with these sounds, with these letters, and how they interact with each other, because it's one thing to know the sounds that go with these symbols. That's why I'm going through all of these, is so that you start to associate these sounds with the symbols. Sounds, symbols. You see the letter or the symbol, you associate it with the sound. But it's another thing to know how these sounds interact with each other. As I mentioned before, vowels are affected by consonants. So look at the consonant that comes in front of the vowel, then you'll know how to pronounce it. That's one of the biggest things that you can learn. That's one of the most helpful strategies you can learn about the hybrid orthography. And it comes down to practice. And it comes down to having all of it explained to you properly. If somebody doesn't know this, then they can't explain it to you. And I wouldn't have known all of this. I wouldn't have known these letters in particular also cause retraction if I didn't research. And just basically go through like a process of elimination. That's how I found all this out. So when you know how to read xa'isla, you can predict how a word will sound, even if you've never seen or heard it before. I can look through any xa'isla dictionary, official dictionary, and by that I mean one that was developed by Handbook, Lincoln and Rath, or Bach. One of those three. If any of those linguists developed a dictionary, I can look through it and sound out any word because I know how to associate the sounds with the symbols and I know how the symbols interact with each other. And that's the power of the orthography.